Duet Night Abyss is a game I was excited for before I played it because I heard the game was anime Warframe. Then when the beta test for it dropped and I played it, I was disappointed in how much it took from Warframe without carving its own path and having reasons for me to love it as its own game. Not to mention with it coming with these same box standard problems a lot of gachas have due to the monetization method. Then the game finally dropped and I don't fully know how to explain my thoughts on it in one sentence. But in the course of playing the game, I grew to like aspects of it, which just made me frustrated at the aspects I saw that were glaring flaws which have not been addressed ever since the beta I played. So if I were to give my current thoughts on the game, I wouldn't say I hate it, I wouldn't say I love it, I'd just say it has a lot of wasted potential. But with some changes, it can realize that potential, and the rest of this video is me explaining why. But I do wish to clarify that when it comes to my criticisms, they do not and should not matter for your enjoyment of the game. If you love this game and love playing it, then that's all that matters. I'm not out here to criticize a game and say it's terrible and people shouldn't play it, because I do think there is something to enjoy, which is why I care enough to make this video. I'd actually encourage people to try out this game if they haven't, but I still want to see the end product improve, because they've done improvements in the past like removing the gacha system. I'm gonna keep it 100. I know there's probably not a more ironic place to hear this from than a guy who plays a lot of gacha games, but I hate gambling. I've made a couple of videos on this now, but I do really believe that the monetization method of gacha games actively hurt the games they're a part of. There's a ton of reasons why, like how it influences power creep, story, game design, content, but if we're just looking at the bare bones of the argument, I'm playing a game. I want to play with all the characters. I do think overall it's a net negative, but it is a necessary evil because it's a way to make these games free and support a live service model for them to get constant updates. Without it, we need some other method like DLC or subscription services to keep the games running, which I could see working for some, maybe, but not a lot of people would actually like it, which is why I like DNA's approach of being monetized from just a skin gacha. I think it's a breath of fresh air and makes the game an actual, well, game. Because when I talk about a gacha game, there's some preconceived notions about how it's generally gonna be, but viewing DNA as that I think would be missing the mark, because what it's trying to be is anime Warframe, so I want to review it and focus on it from that lens. This is also me warning, I'm going to make a lot of Warframe comparisons, because I've played a fair bit of Warframe. Which, yes, I know, the gacha player plays real games, who would have thought? But Duet Night Abyss tries to be Warframe to a bit of an excessive extent, and there always comes up the argument of plagiarism versus inspiration, but dear god, some of this shit is a little too much. Some of the missions are ripped basically one-to-one. Excavation, you go in, find excavators, defeat enemies to get power, power it, it excavates. Exact same on Warframe. Capture, you go to the marked enemy, kill it, capture it. The animation even looks similar. Escort, you find a prisoner, escort it out of the area. Exploration, you defeat enemies to get serum, and when you get maxed out, you're done. Like survival missions and Warframes, but you don't have to wait 5 minutes till it's over. Relocation, you stay on a payload and move it to a different spot, which I know sounds incredibly generic, but in Warframe they have the payload constantly drain your shield, and DNA decided to rip that one for one, which honestly I don't know why, because everyone hates hijack. And some of y'all may be thinking that this can just be coincidences, like, for example, defense and exterminate aren't groundbreaking things to see in games, so the similarities there can be found in a lot of other games. But the movement of DNA was taken from Warframe, like bullet jumping, something that only exists because of a bug in Warframe. It's put one-to-one in this game. Other movement stuff is copied too, like aim gliding, but you can't even do it like it's done in Warframe and just aim down sights, because you're constantly shooting when you press aim. The Demon Wedge system is a mod system from Warframe. The hacking looks pretty similar too. There's a character that looks just like Mesa, with her ability being pretty much the damn same. The end mission reward screen, the system to get character drops or weapons is almost bar for bar the Void Relic system from Warframe, just streamlined to be easier. These within isolation don't really look bad, but when it all piles up, it's very questionable. To where I'd even go so far as to say, Warframe doesn't feel like an inspiration to the game, it feels like a template to copy. Kind of like how Belobog was used for a template of the starting area of the game. And I mean, hell, on that topic, there's also the ruins they've copied from Genshin too. But I don't know why the game couldn't have aimed for the grind of Warframe and then carved out its own path. I don't see why most of the missions needed to be ripped from Warframe, including hijack. No one likes it. We could have just done better by this not being in the game. However, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure all of what I'm saying is already well known. If you've heard of this game for a while, you know it's trying to be anime Warframe. Now, to how much they're trying to be, that is a different story, but what I just said, anime Warframe, is enough of a reason for this game to exist. There's probably a chunk of people who have heard of Warframe, like the idea of the game it is, but have found it hard to get into because the techno and future aesthetic of it don't appeal to them. Maybe you don't fuck with Goss having exhaust vents all over his frame as he constantly moves like a ketamine addict. Maybe you instead want to play as a lady in a nun outfit. Okay, I forgot Warframe did that recently. Maybe you want to play as a red lady with gigantic horns, amongst other gigantic things. So this game is a perfect in-between. But that is where my criticisms on the game come front and center, and a lot of them boil down to the fact that it feels like they copied Warframe without understanding why those systems work in Warframe, or in a lot of cases, without adding on to those systems to make them better. And that is what I would have loved to see them do. For example, a system I think they improved on would be the relic system. It's much simpler, where you get currency from different activities and buy the relic you want. From there, it's like Warframe. You accept one of the missions that's available and run that as you pop open your relic, and that is that. Simple as. Buy, run, pop. But in Warframe, the system can be a lot more annoying. To get the relic, it's a random chance based on the mission you're clearing or packs you're opening from syndicates. From there, when you get it, to increase your chance at getting the rare drop, you can spend Void Traces, which you get at the end of relic missions, and you only get 1 drop compared to DNA's 3. What's meant to make the system less annoying is player trading, where you can trade what you got in a relic you might think is worthless for something you really like. But since DNA doesn't have trading, if they copied this system one-to-one, it'd feel like a piece of shit. Without player trading, this system feels terrible, so copying it would have been a bad idea, which is why they improved on it. It's an example of taking a system from another game, and instead of forcing it into yours, you change it to mold around the direction of your game. But unfortunately, there's a lot of examples of them taking systems from Warframe and jamming it into Duet Night Abyss and hoping they stick. The biggest one being the trial level system. It's a gate that stops you from being able to unlock certain characters or weapons until you get the EXP to level up your rank to what the game is asking for it to be. This is a copy of the mastery system in Warframe. They don't really lock off characters, but they lock off weapons, so you pretty much need to increase that level. But Duet Night Abyss takes it a step further and locks character level and more efficient farming stages behind trial rank, treating it like more of a gotcha player level system. So it feels like you need to go even further into the trial rank system to make your grind efficient. Now, how do you raise it? It's like Warframe. Level characters, level weapons, clear story, and get genie mons. The genie mons are different and, from what I've been hearing, are apparently the fastest way to level trial rank, but let's focus on one of the biggest EXP pools for trial rank, getting and leveling weapons. In Duet Night Abyss, when you get a weapon blueprint and its parts, you can then forge it. However, you will need to get some more materials, and 2 materials that feels like damn near every weapon in this game requires are gold sand and repulsive crystals. Deadass, I'm pretty sure every weapon blueprint requires these. And the way to make them is with enemy drops, which are whatever, to be honest. And the other material is Luno Memento, these little coins. Now, how do you farm them? There's only one way: defense missions. That's it. If you want to make any weapon in the game, you need to farm defense missions. And you do want to make these weapons so you can get trial EXP and max out your character, get demon wedges, get weapons, so you can have a build. This is what I mean when I say DNA takes aspects of Warframe and just throws it into their game, because even though I don't really like the mastery system in Warframe, deadass, the game is significantly better when you hit mastery rank 14, which is why the second I hit that, I stopped giving a fuck about that system. But at least in Warframe, there's so many different ways to make weapons that will increase your rank, to the point where you rarely feel pigeonholed into doing just one specific activity, or at the very least, you don't have only one activity you need to grind out and just that whenever you want to make a weapon. The mastery system is very grindy, but it makes up for it with giving the players a wealth of options to achieve the goal of increasing it. If we're focusing on just weapons, you can run extraction missions to get some cryotic to make a weapon that needs it. You can run relics and trade what you get to Barrow to buy the weapons he's got. And you could do up the lich shit. Granted, it's more preferable to decapitate yourself with a dull, rusty saw, but if you want to get their weapons, you can do that. But DNA just copied the mastery system without really adding anything to it, except for the genie mons, but let's be real, that's not really much of anything. And for a big part of it, weapons, since they decided to make all of them require one material that you can really only get in one mission type, it really hurts player freedom. I'd say it ended up being a net negative for the game to have just copied the mastery system without changing too much, but they can easily fix it by making it so you could get coins from a bunch of different missions rather than just defenses. But then come in the other problems the game has, like most of the missions being a one-to-one without any improvement, and it builds up to where my disappointment for the game is. It's that if this game was done in a better way, or honestly just a bit of a different way, it would be a two-cake situation, where you got another product to enjoy if you're a fan of these types of games. Think Bloodborne and Rise of P, Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, fucking Arknights and Path to Nowhere. That's what I would want this game to be. Now, of course, with it releasing after Warframe's had more than a decade of improvements means it's not going to be up to the level Warframe's currently at. So the problem I have is not that it's a smaller cake than Warframe, it's that it's the same flavor. Like, imagine Warframe is a big ass wedding cake that's vanilla flavor. There's so many different layers, everyone loves it, they know it's gonna be high quality and a banger. If you want something to chew on, that's gonna be an easy, tried and true food. But then DNA is a cake placed right next to it, like a small 10-inch cake, that is also just vanilla flavor. Why would I care about that cake? Like, if it was a strawberry cake, that'd be different, maybe a cheesecake, Black Forest, chocolate cake, something to make it really different from the wedding cake. But it's not. It's for the most part just the same flavor, but tinier, because they use Warframe as something to copy instead of a foundation to build on, for the most part. Because here's the thing, this cake has two things going for it that help it gain its own identity, one being the anime aesthetic, which I already talked about, and the other being the story. But before going into that, I got something to say, that this video is sponsored by Tower of Fantasy. Which, little question about this, right? I wanted to know if y'all have ever heard of a gacha game that decided to completely remove its gacha system after 3 years from its release. Because that is what Tower of Fantasy just did. They're dropping that and focusing on being more of an MMO and playing to the strengths of that, rather than being a hybrid of a gacha and MMO. And because of that, all the characters who were released in the past 3 years are completely free to get. Which does sound overwhelming, but they're making the characters easy to get, so it's going to be easy to catch up for any new players. And on top of that, you can play through all the updates and the new areas that have been released ever since the launch. Now, this is happening on the Warp server. That's where the game is shifting into more MMO aspects. It dropped on Steam a bit ago, and now it's Global's turn. It really feels like they saw the players of the game wanting it to become more of an MMO, and instead of taking tiny steps to that, they just jumped off the diving board into the deep end. I mean, they even got player trading now. There's no more weapon gacha, it's basically a free-to-play's dream. The gear system's getting a rework, there's going to be a life skill system where you increase skills like fishing, gathering, cooking. I've rarely seen such a tone shift for a game. Most of the time changes like this would launch with another game, but they're sticking with the audience they've built up over the years and listening to what they've wanted the game to become. Which is why it's not an exaggeration to say this is probably the best time to get into the game, because, well, it feels like they're making a new game. So if you want to try it out, you can find a link in the description and pinned comment to play it. Now, I was actually very surprised by the story. I thought the main appeal of the game was going to be the grind and gameplay. Story was just going to be something that was there to justify going to new areas, but it was actually pretty good. Though I'd mainly just say the later half of Act 3 is where it really shined, because Part 1 really tried to play off of emotional moments, but didn't feel too attached to what was happening, so it missed for me. Part 2 was largely confined to its own story. I mean, the protagonist doesn't even appear in it, and I thought it was good, though not anything insane. But Part 3 actually locked the fuck in. I'm gonna go into spoilers as I explain why it's good, so skip to here if you don't want to be spoiled. So the setting of the first area of the game, Belobog, is a pretty bog standard one. There's the Empire, which is the force that rules over the city, and the Osa rule over the Charons. They're a race of people who can use demonic powers, and because of this the Empire treats them, well, about as well as you can expect. Long story short, they're heavily racist to them, but what Charons can do is join the Empire and help in their wars. If you climb high enough, you become a Laurel Charon, and they're, hopefully, not as racist towards you. But then we follow the story of Rhythm and what happened to her brother. See, he was very gifted, and because of that he joined a squad that rarely takes anyone in. But in between us learning about her brother, they're also trying to solve a case of murders that have happened recently, done by this fellow in a suit of armor. But as the plot progresses, their base is found out and we go to stop them. Rhythm looks to deal a killing blow, but they're prohibited to chase them down and see their body for confirmation. And this makes Rhythm really question the Empire and if they're doing well. I mean, the reason the murders were never looked into is because it was happening against Charons. The Empire really only stepped in when some Solarians in the Empire were killed. And then there's also the fact that the killer wasn't acting alone, so why aren't they going after their companion that they never even fought? So she decides to break away from the army and investigate this on her own, and shortly afterwards, they end up meeting the murderer. Turns out he didn't die, and also, turns out it's her brother that went away. And he describes why he looks this way, because he isn't wearing armor. That is what his body was turned into. As the reality of being a Lord Charon in the army isn't being treated as a regular soldier, in some cases, because he was instead used as an experimentation subject. They want to further the power he has from being a Charon and turn him into an obedient monster that will fight for the Empire. And I just fucking recognized that this world building is almost dead-ass Attack on Titans. Just to replace the Charons with Eldians and the Empire with Marlians, though except for the Titan power killing them in 13 years, they can instead die and turn into monsters from the Charon power. You got Laurel Charons being honorary Marlians. No wonder the game has fucking pass in it. Bro, Purgatory Island might as well be Paradise. I'm not gonna lie, it's actually concerning the amount of parallels I can draw between DNA's world building and Attack on Titans. It's not one for one like how the stages are ripped from Warframes, but the similarities mixed with the cases of plagiarism we've seen don't give me much hope. We've copied Warframe stages, Belobog from Honkai Star Rail, the Abyss from Genshin, that one's a freebie though, and then possibly the world building from Attack on Titan. Like, I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but I'm finding it really hard to. It's way too similar, especially because in the lore, Karens used to be in power before everyone got fed up with them and went against them. It just feels like the Great Titan War, bro. I don't know. I'm not saying the story of the game is a ripoff from AOT, especially because it goes off in its own way, but I am saying the world building is probably heavily inspired from it because it's seeming way too similar. If it was just this on its own, I wouldn't think too much of it, but with how the game is found with taking one-to-ones from other games, it really makes me think the world building was the same case as the gameplay. But I'll put those thoughts to the side for now and continue with talking about the story with how I planned. So the plot progresses and it's revealed that Rhythm's brother, Blues, actually died by that gunshot, and the person who said they were Blues was the other person he escaped containment with, who's acting like her brother so she would not know that she was the one who killed him. And to help cover the tracks of their involvement in protecting them, Fantasio fights the Empire on his own to the death, so the truth of what happens never gets revealed. And this is a segment I really like because the twists were well written, but more importantly, Fantasio is a playable character, and they killed him off. In fact, he isn't the only one. Psyche is too, and they also killed her. Granted, they allude to bringing Psyche back from the dead, but that's mainly done because she's based off the Greek Psyche and mythology. But the reason I like the game being fine with killing off its playable characters is because it shows the difference it not being a gacha brings up. Because a lot of them are really scared to take that step with their characters. Not to say it can't be done, because there are some notable examples, but in the vast majority of times, we all know the story ain't gonna pull the trigger. If a character is playable, that means they more than likely won't be killed, because they have to sell the player on the character, and it's a little hard to do that when they're canonically 6 feet under. It's also part of the reason why these games are scared to make playable characters assholes or largely pieces of shit to the player. Because if the game is focused purely on selling, the character needs to be agreeable enough to rake in a lot of bread. But they're not trying to sell you on the character. They're trying to make you invested in the game, then have fashion, which is the end game of most multiplayer games, be what keeps them afloat. Now, end of the day, that is another strength of them having gotten rid of the gacha, but I like it because it's a personal strength of the game. It's what it can play to. I just really wish they play into these unique strengths more often, because the biggest criticism I have for the game is not that it copies stuff from other games, it's that it does it without integrating what they are copying well enough to fit the game as well as it can, or without making it better. Because I believe the game is good, I think it has potential, I've played bad games, I'd say this one isn't close to being shit, but the laziness with which they approach design aspects of this game really makes me scratch my head. Like, it feels a bit at odds, because when I think of games that rip shit off, I think of ones that cut corners in any way they can. Like a shit ton of the rip-off games I've played that really only give the bare minimum for what they need to function. And if the game was that, there would be some aspects that are ripped away, like the animations wouldn't be as good, the story, aside from the world building, because I'm really questioning that, would be shit. Hell, some of the really nice looking segments in the story would have been confined to just basic animations, or possibly white text on a black screen. But the game hasn't cut corners where I'd really expect it to if it was fully lazy, which makes the design choices that are ripoffs make even less sense to me. Now, I'm not going to repeat the ones I've already brought up, but a big problem of the game is that it's not really difficult. So the game's a hack and slash like Warframe, where the enemies are largely there just for you to montage. It's not really a fair fight. They're a grunt, you're a space god, but Warframe is able to have difficulty by making the mission objective hard, or, and this is mainly where it is, making the enemies much stronger. And it's done by increasing their stats, which at first glance sounds like artificial difficulty, because all you're doing to make the enemies harder is just multiplying the numbers that are already there. But what Warframe does to make this interesting for the player is that it enables the player to make their build more optimized and use that to counteract what the enemy is doing. And there's such a wealth of systems in the game to where you aren't really pigeonholed into going for one strategy that all frames in the game must do. Like, for example, the build I mainly use, it's Korra Whip Claw, incredibly basic. I go around, use this fucking Whip Claw, it does a shit ton of damage, but to stay alive, I make it so my shield is incredibly small, and when the enemies break it, I get a bit of invulnerability. Then I have a mod which gives me a bit of shield on ability cast, which I'm always doing because Whip Claw costs nothing, to where the shield is always being built back and it makes it really hard to die. Then I get energy easily from a different frame's ability, I helmet into Korra. But then there's Araxia, for example, to where she can go invisible for fucking ever and stay alive that way. And this level of depth is something that is currently missing from Duet Night Abyss, in part because the game hasn't really had time to build its mod system and unit complexity, but also because the characters only have 2 abilities. It slashes the amount of depth the characters can have, because if they try to do Warframe's route of enemies that become so overpowered you need to have a great build to fight against them, I think a lot of units would be limited by their kits having half of the abilities. They copied Warframe's combat system, mission, and general gameplay, but decided that the units would only have 2 skills instead of 4, which overall lowers the depth an individual unit can have. Where I can maybe see the game cooking in its own way with this would be the companion system in the game, where you can have 2 other AI units with you that are characters you've built. So ideally, you could have builds that incorporate multiple characters and have a lot of synergy there. That would be a big way they can change from the Warframe system. As in that, if you choose solo, you're largely alone, but if hard content is going to be built around synergy with your companions and stages, then I worry about multiplayer where you won't have that synergy and everyone's just doing their own thing. If they make characters simpler to promote team building as a big focus on the game, then it makes multiplayer harder because you aren't guaranteed to have team building. Unless they go fully into role selecting, which, I mean, it'd be different, so I'm interested in that, because at the end of the day, I really just want the game to do its own thing. Like, take the framework of Warframe, but make it anime, improve on that shit, own it. But just don't take a shit ton of stuff from it one-to-one. Like, do the missions really need to be taken from Warframe? Did we need to copy the mastery system from Warframe without giving the player an entire star chart to explore as they chip away at it? And why do we have to turn the mastery system into basically a player-level gacha system? Why did bullet jumping and aim gliding have to be copied without adding on some other movement tech to it, especially considering the bullet jumping now is like watching a newborn baby try to do it? I'm personally fine with games that take heavy inspiration from other games, because the opposite of that is something I hate, like the Nemesis system from Shadow of War being patented so no one could use it, followed shortly by Warner Bros doing fucking nothing with that patent and just letting it die. Innovation is a core part of games. So many take aspects from others and just do it better, and that pushes games as a medium forward, which is why I would love for DNA to have taken shit from Warframe and just done it better, innovate on it. But for most stuff, they really haven't. Now, thankfully they still can, improvements can be made, they could make more stages, change their coins so you can farm out more of them how you want to, make the movement better by adding more stuff, or hell, actually just give momentum to the bullet dash so it doesn't feel like a pitiful fart in the wind. And that's why I say the game has potential, but how they've copied without really adding on to the product makes me feel like in most aspects, it's just a worse Warframe, when it could have been a lot more. And this is where I hope criticism towards the game, which they said they're really open to, could improve these aspects. Now, part of the reason why the game launched in this state is, from what I've heard, because the higher-ups wanted the game out quick, so not a lot of time was available to work on feedback they got from the beta tests. And yeah, the rush is kinda obvious at times. Like watching this cutscene where this area blows up, but if you look past the rubble, it's completely fine. Or keeping both takes the voice actor did for this line.
The weather in Hyperborea today. The weather in Hyperborea today.
The building in this scene being actually just 2D. The lip syncing being, I assume, broken, or the game sometimes not closing when I alt F4 it, you can see where the rushing is, but I hope that with the game getting its established base of players, which is pretty damn big, they can start improving it and letting this game flourish. Though I won't lie, hearing the higher ups wanted the game to release in a bit of a buggy state really worries me because unfortunately, game devs need to answer to what the suits say. So if the suits are being shitty, it's going to reflect in the game despite the wants of the development team. But I do think with the proper criticism and people willingly giving that to the devs, they can capitalize on the potential of this game to make it feel like a competitor to Warframe instead of just a little brother. Innovation is the reason why games are as good as they are now, which is why I really want to see more of it.
When you hear the clock tick, time moves